So welcome everybody. Lovely to see you at the July 2025 TELedvisors webinar. And hello to everybody listening to the recording from our YouTube channel a bit later. My name's Penny. I'm today on the lands of the Ngunnawal people near the mighty Murrumbidgee. And my acknowledgements to the traditional owners here and to all of those owners in other parts of Australasia. So happy today to have Dr. Nikolai Alksnis as our presenter. Nick will tell us, I'm sure, a bit more about the context where this work on prototyping was developed. Nick also has a fascinating history in digital education and in maths and philosophy, which we may or may not hear about today. But so happy to have Nick here, and we've got our chat running. Please pop questions in there as you're thinking about them, and we'll have some more time at the end, I think, to discuss that, if that's okay with you, Nick, or would you like to be interrupted in mid-flow?
I'm happy to be interrupted mid-flow. I'm happy to get a discussion going.
Yes.
But why don't I dive in and I'll give some context and I'll, let's get started.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks, Penny. So I'm going to just jump straight in and then I'm going to pause a bit of reflection. So I'm going to be talking about project management, which is perhaps not the most interesting thing to talk about, especially in terms of digital education. But hopefully by the end of it, you're either sharing your pain stories with me or you're seeing some of the benefits if it's something that you haven't been considering yourself. The first thing I really want to do is, where did I start on this journey? And I started on this journey because of the learning design dream. Now, these are my, mandatory ChatGPT created comic here that I feel every presentation now must have. And I'm going to talk a bit about AI at the end because I think it's a great tool that we can come back to. But we've all been there who've worked in this third space area. And that's, we have a vision, we come into these great sessions, whether we're redesigning curriculum, we might be doing a support program for some students. We're coming together. We want to be data informed, immersive. It's going to be great. You have a backwards thumb giving you a thumbs up there. That's always good in that comic. But then, we hit the reality. We have a weird clock with Friday and numbers on it, but that's fine. But what we end up doing is we're putting lectures up, or we're not doing that quite the immersive content because we run out of time. And we don't always deliver the best experiences. Now, perhaps that's not your case, but at least in many of the projects I've been across La Trobe University, Monash University, and now I'm just starting here at university, I see that, you sometimes can't hit those highs that you want to hit and give those students the experience that you want to do and that you can build. And to be frank, 100%, no, not quite, but I blame Agile project management to a degree. And I'll talk a little bit that around the talk. Agile project management is something that is pretty much everywhere if you're in a professional situation, whether it's at higher education, whether you're in other areas of software development, of course, but finance, everywhere. And really what I'm going to do is discuss it in terms of the education context and why it doesn't always fit and why it might be leading to cases where you're not hitting those highs that you are when you're doing development. A little bit about it, just so everyone's on the same page. I'm sure many of you know about it already. There's some core principles of Agile, right? It's about iteration at heart. You work in these cycles, what are often called sprints, and then you're meant to be responding to change, and you don't want to be stuck to rigid plans. For those who are old enough, before Agile, you had what was called waterfall. A waterfall project design was this massive, generally document where you planned out every little thing. Along came Agile, right? And it kind of helped get rid of that. And we'll just do things agilely. We'll move fast. We'll collaborate. We'll use feedback, which is a key part of it. And we'll just, kind of create product over documentation. And if you're familiar with the manifesto for Agile software development, it's got a good principle at its heart: individuals and interactions over process and tools, right? It really wants to put people at the front of it. And, it won hearts. in terms of as I just said, the corporate world or professional world. It's responding to changes over those rigid plans. It really values working solutions. It's built around a concept of getting something in people's hands fast, right? It has a clear structure, and I'm sure many are familiar with that, with sprints, stand-ups, and retros. You know what to do. You have Scrum Masters, if you're familiar with these terms, who will guide you through any project. And it's been quite successful in fast-moving tech environments, with a caveat of having accessible users. But in education projects, we don't always have those conditions that really make Agile successful. For one thing, our timelines are often fixed, right? Teaching periods, the number one thing, a teaching period really defines a lot of the work you do when developing curriculum. And when that teaching period goes live, you need things up and they need to be in working order. And I really think of that particularly for assessment. Compare the idea of an agile software developer who might throw in a new feature that doesn't quite work versus someone developing an assessment that may have key problems. Now, not every assessment goes smoothly, 100%, but we really want to avoid something that can impact a student's development and how they move through, because we need to deliver that assessment on time. Those students are often distant or hard to reach as well. If you've ever tried to bribe students for focus groups, sometimes you're lucky, sometimes you're not. How can I get feedback on my work? How am I going to know that I'm successfully reaching out to these students? The windows for iteration often narrow. A lot of the times, the mentality is we're going to build this, going to last, maybe not forever, may have overcooked it there, but for a long period, 2 years, 4 years, 5 years. You can work on I've worked on courses that are 7 years old. I think delivery in higher education also trumps discovery, as I've got here. Like a lot of the time, it's about getting and churning units out. There's so many courses for central teams or for faculty or college-based teams. There's always so much to do. The next thing's always coming at you. Where is the time to kind of do some research to up the quality that you're doing? And academic calendars are also quite fixed, right? There's no flexibility. If something blows out, a project goes out, along with those timelines, there's no give there whatsoever. I'm hoping this is resonating with some. I see Penny nodding, and I've got Anthony nodding in my screen, but I hope others are aligned to this. So what this talk is about is I propose enhancing. I really wish I was throwing out Agile process, but I'm not saying throw it out. I'm saying enhance your Agile process with a type of prototyping. And it gives a bunch of things, and I'm going to talk about what the benefits are. But one of the key things is speed without complexity. When it works well, you can move fast, but you're not overcomplicating matters. You get feedback, and what I said, feedback and often. A traditional way of Agile is you might do your retro at the end, you might do your reflection, but the project's already done and you've moved on to the next one. I'm going to show you how prototyping really puts that at the front end. You get to focus on decisions, what I've called here velocity. Velocity means getting things done fast, right? But you really can pause, take decision. And also the goal is to have low waste and high alignment. So you're creating things that are useful and people are expecting it. So your SMEs, your other people involved in your project, they know what's coming. They're happy to reuse this. So I'm going to break down again, so we're on the same page. What is prototyping? You're not familiar. So it's really about creating simple models, right? It's used a lot in engineering, and I think it's when I was at the Faculty of Engineering, Monash, is where I really kind of got into this idea, but it does come also from software and creating that. And I have worked in a software company where I wouldn't say we prototyped a certain way. I'll talk about the next slide, but it is a key there where you can build things fast and then change them. It also comes for those who work in design, right? When you're doing storyboards, wireframes, ideas like that. In these cases, often seem to reduce risk. Like rather than just building a big product, we're going to build a prototype first. Again, we're engaging users early, and there's that learn by doing. And I think those who work in kind of learning design in similar areas, when sometimes you don't know what you've done, you may never have worked on a health course, for example, and you need to learn by doing. And prototyping really gives that that in the structure of how you work. And the goal is to avoid costly mistakes later. Just some types of prototyping. We have what's called a throwaway or rapid. Uh, this one really prioritizes speed and early feedback, built quickly, and then you can discard. And we'll kind of come back to that discard part. Evolutionary, so that's kind of more of a kind of iteration where you're building upon. Sequence is when you divide something up into modules and you refine each individually and then you combine as a larger whole. What's called extreme, it's got a few names, but I like extreme here. When you're using web or app design, you literally start from sketches. You know, you hear stories of people, I just did a design on the back of a, napkin, and then now I have this $1 million product or whatever it is. That's really where you take basic elements, you build up slowly, one by one until you've got. I'm really going to focus here on one of these, what's my favorite, which is a throwaway or rapid prototype. And I'm really going to argue why I think this fits the areas that we're in the best, even though it can feel sad to throw away your hard work. So the rapid prototyping basics, again, it's fast, it's feedback driven. You want to create testable models to learn quickly and move forward with confidence. One of the things I think can be the hardest to do is to build to throw away. I think that's something I'm happy to discuss and emphasize, and I've got a bit of kind of some prompting questions later. How to really get into a model, and because one of the things I often discuss when I bring this up is people like, I'm doing it already. And if I ever probe people when they're doing it already, what turns out they're doing is they're making something and then they're making it better. And I'm going to give you 3 reasons in a second why you shouldn't be doing that way. Low investment, right? That's the other thing. Low time investment, high learning. You really want to be learning, capturing ideas. And it's great for that uncertain environment that we often exist in. If you want to know when it should be used, time is short. I think that, that's all the time for those in this field. But requirements are unclear. Going back to that idea of those old waterfall style projects, the key for that was gathering user requirements and understanding user requirements. Now, if you've worked in software or if you tried to gather user requirements in a similar kind of education space, I think you'd know how difficult that is. And Agile came along and was meant to be, well, you don't need to know all the requirements because we'll make it and we'll get the feedback on those requirements. This is continuing on that idea. If you've got people who say they want something and they're being vague, if you can show them a prototype, you'll instantly get responses and you'll be able to get clarity around what they are. So the big claim I'm really making is that prototyping helps people be better designers. And it helps them in 3 areas. And this is, I should say, the rapid prototyping. This is the throwing away aspect. I'm going to go through each of these, but it helps teams get over the fear of failing. It prevents the kind of the first answer lock-in problem, and it counters unthinking agreements is what I've labeled that. To dive into that, so rapid prototyping really celebrates iteration, not perfection. Having worked in higher education over 15 years now, people who are dedicated to education can often want things to be certain ways, whether that's our SMEs, whether that's our staff ourselves. We like things to be perfect. We've often had, great careers, working up to our PhD levels, putting things, getting used to delivering high quality things. But often the time, the more you work in the industry, you can see the perfection can get in your way. Oddly, it can also boost confidence because nobody is going to be critical if it's a throwaway prototype. And that's the bit. If it's not throwaway and it's you're going to iterate on it, then I think that confidence can be lost, right? That the sense that people might judge me, people might worry about it. It's a key part in the throwaway that this kind of really takes the pressure off. So an example I was going to share was somebody that from one of my teams really wanted to start coding. They wanted to use dynamic features of JavaScript, but they really had minimal background, great build-up knowledge, but they knew that the new great tool, ChatGPT or another LLM, can help with code. What I asked them to do was give me something that was throwaway, that would not work perfectly. Not a proof of concept, because a proof of concept would put the pressure back on them to say, can you do this or not? But what I wanted for them to show me was a prototype that can be built quickly and then assessed if it's actually adding anything valuable to the design. So will that piece of dynamic HTML actually work? And they had the option of doing that in code. They had the option of doing that using Photoshop or a similar tool to develop it. I do notice chats coming in. I'm not really pausing for questions. I'm happy if anyone wants me to go back.
Chats are going well. You're answering our questions as we go. Thanks, Nick.
Okay, great. I'm not sure if people are familiar with what I've got here. It's first answer lock-in. I couldn't find a better phrase. I was furiously Googling for one. It's known when you do creative process. I think it's best the context. You've got a problem, something's not working quite right, you call a meeting. You go into that meeting, somebody suggests an answer. That answer makes sense. You've got limited time, you've got somewhere else to be, you accept that, right? But is it really the best outcome that you're looking for? Is it going to give the results that you're looking for? And is it going to drive your work to that high standard that you wanted to? If you get that first answer, you look to building something again, quickly, rapidly, just a simple prototype. What it allows you to do is you turn away from yes and agreement to looking at something. You're looking at an artifact. You're looking at something you can critique. You're looking at something that can be put in place. You can look at something you refine. And that can help break this inertia of early consensus, right? That, yeah, that's a great idea. That'll work. We're all busy people. Let's get on with it. And allow for you to see what is the actual best answer in that situation, or at least help work towards it. One that I've had a couple of times actually is agreement around a welcome video. Now, I know welcome videos are popular, but often they are requested by some of the people that SMEs I work with. What I've done is often mocked up one or something similar and then tracked how often the students are watching that video, right? Or how often they're engaging it or getting some kind of feedback. And this is done really quickly. It's quite easy, in my experience, to show that students won't watch a 3-minute video unless it's something to do with assessment or something similar, and it's not having the impact that the teaching staff often want. What I often do, what I've done sneakily, is then put a nice little animated GIF there instead, and then got students to give feedback like that. And then, in a sense, you're forced to watch something. But by able to doing that really quickly, I'm able to get that feedback. I'm able to bring that person along with me with the change I want to make or the new idea I want to bring, and I'm able to show them why potentially the first idea that they came across was maybe not the right one. What I'm calling unthinking agreement. Again, let's go to that meeting situation. Let's go to the area where people are agreeing. People are considering what they've done before. How can you break that? How can you just not get into those patterns of agreement? And I think this is a good one if you're dealing with management or senior management, and they're kind of wanting to know how you're going to work towards developing a course or a similar type artifact, and they just kind of fall back into the habit of, well, what did we do in the past, or what worked in the past? If you're able to show them something that's a bit different, able to quickly get something together, I think it's a great tool for changing minds, especially for those who think they've seen it all before, or it's lower down on their priority. The other thing I really love about this is just the faster feedback, right? and it really allows for input. Again, you've got an artifact in front of you rather than concepts. And I'm even talking here about, you might be working on, a course design or a unit design. You might have a unit map, a course map. It all looks great in that document. But what does it do when it hits the page of an LMS or it's a workshop? You can get physical with these too. You can prototype what a workshop activity would be like. How is it actually going to play out? How are we going to actually improve or change that first year workshop? We were really trying to drive engagement. We were really trying to get people to love the subject, be interested in the subject, want to do the pre-class activity or whatever it may be. You can get feedback if you're putting things in front of people that may push the boundaries from what they've done before and get people away from the standard things, whether it's a pre-class quiz or a typical type workshop layout. Again, confidence is a big one here. I've seen LDs grow by using prototypes to allow to divert criticism away from perhaps ideas of individuals as well. It makes that artifact on the table that people can discuss, that becomes and encourages feedback, talking back and forth to each other as the norm. And for those who kind of are interested in, building something like high performance teams and all that, criticism or feedback or whatever you want to call it is often seen as a key element to that. So this can help teams really build that and have a kind of locus for working around it. I've worked in great teams, but everybody always agreed. Everyone always said everything was great. And I use prototypes in those cases to really allow people to just be critical so that we could make better work, so that we could develop more engaging student experiences. All right, what are the results of all this? I'm limited in how I can present this, and I will advocate when I first put this together, this was going to be an interactive class in person. So I've had some small changes since then. But this is what we managed to create with one group of a welcome panel in Moodle. So this is a dynamic. I can't quite give you the full impact of it, unfortunately, because I can't log in and show you. But this is what Moodle looks like very differently. And I know we have great designs, a lot of people have great templates, but what this actually do is where it is marking progress. Those buttons would change, we'll get movement across so that students never really had to look or scroll down. The next activity would be presented up to them. And this all started from just simple ideas around how can we keep students engaged, right? And what actually are students clicking on, and throwing ideas out, putting them on the table, getting student feedback, going again, right? As quickly as we could in the limited time that we had, using rough things. And the first versions of these, and this is what I wasn't able to get, but we go from sketches, we go up, we build up to something like this. And it really allowed for a next level. The output of this was massive increase in engagement. This is for a support program around mathematics. Once I think we got that design element correct, it really drove, I don't know what the final numbers were, but at one stage it was a 3,000 or 300% increase or something massive like that, just through having a engaging interface that took away the need for students to have to go digging or find or what they had to do. And it was all beautifully presented to them. And I don't think we knew we could do it until we got in and got our hands dirty and had that prototyping where we learnt and shared, got feedback and grew.
Nick, can I just ask who was in the room when you were working on that prototype?
So this prototype, there was a digital developer, I'm trying to remember the title, digital producer. So we had somebody basically doing the code, somebody doing the design, and then we would have feedback from students, limited feedback from students, but teachers, like teaching staff, and then of course kind of managers or the senior managers at the same time. So to give you an idea of the structure, the weekly engagement over about 4 weeks, I think it was, there was a team that was with me and the other people who worked on it every time, and every about 2 weeks we'd go and show a bigger panel. So it was quite quick, right? Like we needed to be done, and then after that 4 weeks of kind of iteration, then it was built and done. So the key there was bringing the stakeholders in. In some cases, they should be weekly. Sometimes you just want to meet with your core team and say, hey, this is my idea, is it working? And then you can get quick feedback there. But I really recommend weekly feedback for any rapid prototyping, whether it's colleagues or external.
Thanks so much. Amelia's also got a question in the chat. Do you start with a guiding question? How might we do this when beginning?
I've got some little walkthrough of how I'm going to do it, so I'll share that in a second. It's a picture. I'm hoping it works, but yeah, that's coming up in a second, and hopefully that answers those questions. Another just kind of what was the successes of it. So it's a similar project. We had, I think, over 100 branching content trees with interactive videos and levels and answer prompts developed in under 6 months. I was pretty sure just over 6 months. So, you might, these are things that I think many of us have created, but I think the sheer scale and the ability for us to do this quickly and the depth of our branching trees was really allowed because we were able to quickly find the problems, the difficulties of doing a test pilot really fast, and then iterating, improving the design, throwing some bits away that didn't work, having to admit failures, this wasn't how it worked, and really kind of going to that next level, that happy picture of the learning designer at the start that I showed to you, and to get to that kind of high degree. And in the end, there were 48 distinct modules, if I remember correctly. I mean, you're looking at 2 to 3 hours on each one, and endless questions, practice questions, and all that to allow students to improve their mathematics. So just to go back to the next point, which is how can I get started? Quick tips before I kind of dive in, and I really hope my next pictures work. It's include it as normal design and development, not as a special process. And that's really what I want to emphasize here. And hopefully I can walk you through that a little bit. And the other thing is prototyping needs practice. You might do it and go, well, this was pointless. But like any skill, you need to work up towards it, and you need to get better at it, and you need to know what questions to ask and when to ask. And something maybe we could spend a bit of time at the end at is, what's the right tool for you and your team? How do I quickly put something together? It can often be mistaken. Again, we go back into that perfection. Oh, I'll create it on the LMS, right? Well, if you create on the LMS, it's going to take time. It's going to take serious time. What if you draw it? What if I love a Miro board or a similar kind of board where I'm using sticky notes and all those things. How can I, often changing the tool can get people to engage and think a bit differently about it. For more detail, is that legible? That's my question I have for this was the wonderful intern who wrote out this for me for one of my places, and I thought it was a great representation, so I wanted to keep it. Number one, identify what could be a prototype when you're doing any project, because you're not going to be able to prototype everything normally, right? Find something that you want to push, find something that you want to expand upon. And we've got the little hack there. Is there already something that could be used and reviewed, right? And that's often a great tool. Take an example, you might have a quiz and you know that students aren't engaging with it. It's not really a prototype, but start by dissecting that. What if I would tweak this? What if I did this? That can often be a starting point if you're struggling. Basic requirements. So here you kind of put your hat on and you guess the basic requirements, whether you're doing it for yourself or you do have a list of requirements. You get those written down so you know what you're working towards. Then you pick your type. I'm always saying use throwaway personally, but sometimes evolutionary is better. What you might find is you start with throwaway and then you move through, or you get to a more agile style system. And some consideration is speed a factor. I mean, the answer is always yes, I feel, to that one. I didn't talk too much about this, but if I prototype fidelity, so low, medium, high is kind of how it's normally classed. How much detail are you going to put into this prototype? I would say only ever use high detail with that lovely drawn robot there. For something, this is your showstopper. This is going to be the #1 thing on your project. Other times you're using low and sometimes medium. And then the key that I've found to success is setting the review dates ahead of time. Commit to when you're going to bring people in to look at it. And that helps get people away from not being ready, not feeling ready. They have to show it. It's due, like I say once a week, at least weekly, 2 weeks max. A weekly review can just be 15 minutes, and where possible include end users. And like I said, I think more than 2 weeks with the end users, you're already kind of not going to get that benefit. Here I had the caveat of use people outside your team. Off we are to developing the initial prototype, and then we go through a review stage, identify further requirements, because what often happens is, well, this doesn't do whatever it is we thought it would, right? And this is how you're aligning expectations. You're aligning expectations. This doesn't, have the learning outcomes that I need. It's not asking the questions that I needed to. You get that feedback so much quicker than if you produce a full-blown assessment at the end and somebody looks at it and said, this is not what I need. Again, you might look to increase your fidelity, and then you're going to revise and enhance, and then you kind of go down a bit of a loop of that. Now, hopefully that's useful and legible. There are, of course, many ways to do it. I'll pause for questions if anyone wants to ask anything here.
Anyone can unmute if they want to put their hand up. I think we're good, Nick, as far as questions. I've got a couple to save just at the end. I don't think we've got anything right now.
All right. Well, like I said, I wish that I was getting rid of Agile, but in practice, what I've presented to you was a combination of prototyping and Agile, in the sense that you're not really replacing any of the other work you're doing, whether you want to do stand-ups, whether you want to do check-ins, when you want to do anything like that. But by introducing the idea of producing things quickly at the start of any project, I've seen the benefits that you can have and how you can align your team and also get your stakeholders better aligned with you to produce great third-space content. I did have 2 talking points, and as I said, a lot of people say I'm already doing this, and I'm happy to discuss when you are, you're not. One of the biggest things, if you want to do rapid prototyping, is, are you literally throwing it away? Now, for digital content, that seems a little odd, right? For building something in engineering, you couldn't use the parts anymore. But is it something that's reusable? That doesn't mean the design isn't reusable, but is the artifact itself reusable? And I really push people to get something and design in a medium that means they can't keep it, so that they avoid that idea of, oh, well, I've got this now and I'll keep working on it, even though they may have got a lot of feedback that suggested it should change. And the next one is, what tools do people use if they are doing it, or if they are thinking about it, or they are doing some iteration work? Part of the reason I kept my dodgy ChatGPT comic at the start was it's such a great tool for this, I think, and it's such a great way for people to develop knowledge. And I think, personally, it's not always ready for final product, especially in a lot of the work we do, but it is great for prototyping, and it is a great tool to get things started and really put something in front of people as quickly as possible. But I would love to have any discussion if people have thoughts on that. Another great one is Photoshop, if you have any skills in that area.
Nick, thanks so much. I'd love to hear from people about the tools that they're using. Just to report on a point up in the chat that refers to your final question about sort of the personal aspect of this as well as the product, about the people, getting the people on board.
Yes.
Solomon's comment in the chat I like very much. I find having a prototype can help conversation go from being person versus person to all of us versus the problem or the challenge or the opportunity.
That's it.
That's the focus for thought. Yogita's adding to that. So thanks so much. People are adding tools in the chat. Got Dan's put in e-learning expert agent for ChatGPT, and Nikki's added some a free prototyping tool, Nikki, from stored on Figma. Build interactive prototype decisions. Yes, Solomon.
Thank you, Nick. This has been fantastic. I really love, as a learning designer, I really love the learning design specific examples. I'm wondering, what guidance do you have when you've got the challenge of, at some point we will need a university-wide solution, but we need something right now for a specific faculty or school?
Look, that's always a difficult one because of your user requirements gathering, right? You go down the rabbit hole of what that school needs, and then you may not factor it all in. I guess if you're working in that school context, it's great to have a working or prototype version to show why your way is the great way, why we should do it this way, because you can perhaps get people on board to doing it more aligned to a particular school. I think if it's the reverse, you may have been given a template, a university-wide template, right? And you want to show why you want to break outside that template, grabbing a screenshot and starting playing around with it, or playing with the CSS on the side, as some successful things we've done to show, hey, look, we could add these features and it's pretty easy to add, and I get something a bit different. Yeah, that's worked successfully for me on 2 occasions, actually. I'm not sure if that's helpful to you, though.
Yeah, thank you.
Colin's in a shared room, so I don't think he's speaking, but he's adding in the chat that if you take things uni-wide, that's a whole lot more stakeholders. Sounds like an iteration. Is that a bad agile kind of way to discuss things, Colin?
Well, look, as I said, I can't get rid of agile, but you get just having the stakeholder meetings, having been in many stakeholder meetings and some with Colin, we're often talking about ideas, and we often get agreement, or we leave confused or something like that. Having something that we would be nodding along to much sooner or disagreeing with, I think would have helped some of those stakeholder meetings and really get that alignment. I know when I recently did a big uplift of Moodle site, getting people in early really helped us make some decisions, and showing them what it would look like really eased that tension around making a big change.
Does anybody else want to talk about any tools that they've used when they've actually had this prototyping stage in their design work?
I guess I see Solomon's question there quickly. He's saying a post-prototype iteration, test something small and quick for a single school. I mean, that is technically agile. That is exactly what agile is, because you build something for that small user base, and then you try to grow it to the bigger one. The thing would be is if you can try and convince your school first off why you should do something different, and you throw something together that's not quite working and not quite there yet, and then you get them on board. And then you can, share that with a wider audience.
It
Thanks,
sort,
Agina.
it sort of seems clear that, I think you mentioned earlier, Nick, that trying to stop people from just unthinkingly accepting things. I think that would be a good rule. I think that'd be a good motto for universities. But I mean, also unthinking means unlearning things as well, right? So
yeah,
as
no, 100%. I guess I'm really thinking of those big meetings where things are being decided and we're accepting because we've got somewhere else to go, or we're not fully paying attention. it's funny how much, and I guess I felt a little bit let down this session. I would have loved to share some little digital prototypes with you or something like that, and we could have really practiced the discussion, but maybe that's for next time, because I guess I said it's quite a skill to talk about things, get in your hands, just that feeling of whatever it is can really, I think, prompt a different way of thinking, right? And engage you in that sense. So that really does deal with that issue.
Thank you, Nick. I think that's a very good point for later work. Colleen's also said, interesting not to hear the term templating today, template for design work.
Yeah. I would say that I do like templates, but it's separate from my prototyping work. So the way that I like doing it is we design something, we make it, we get agreement in the team, and then that becomes a reusable artifact or template, whatever you want to call it. But then for the next project, we get to do something else, right? We get to move on. So it's not like templates can't be useful, but templates are rigid and we want to change them, we want to improve them. So templates are like in the back pocket. We come to a new unit, there's a new collaboration piece or something like that, and we don't have anything that fits it, or the one that we have is quite old. So that's when we put on the prototyping hats. Let's make this better, let's make this good. We'll spend a little bit more time on this because actually we've got a good set of templates or other things that we know we can roll out for the rest of the unit course, whatever it is, and we get to put our R&D works. And that's, I guess, what I was trying to say, make it part of the process is if you are really able to do that at the beginning and identify what those prototypes could be, then you do keep building on your quality of work. You do keep expanding, even though you may sometimes fall back on things that are templates or existing structures.
Nick, Amelia's question there, and I mean, the involvement of students is really interesting and perhaps not regularized in all universities, but Amelia asks, how many touch points do you think you could manage in a rapid review?
I mean, timelines as many as you can get. I think after about 4, people will tune out because they've seen it so many times. So 2 is impactful. 3 will probably give you, like the extra bit of information, and 4, you're probably pushing it. Just from my experience, of course, these numbers change, but if you're not making big changes, then why are you bringing the users in, I guess? So that can also help guide you. So if it's very different from each time, well, then we do need to get feedback. But if we're starting to solidify the design, then we trust that that's built on the feedback that we've got previously.
Great, thank you so much. Great. Any other questions from people who are already prototyping or people who would like to take it more seriously?
I'm happy to. So you asked the question, what tools do you use? I actually posted a little example in the chat because you mentioned AI, and obviously like ChatGPT can help you with writing the code, but actually some of the tools like Claude and Gemini that have the ability to create interactive, like fully interactive tools, like I said, you can just give it a sketch. So you're talking about just making a quick sketch. I wasn't feeling very inspired, but I was like, okay, I'll just sketch. Okay, it's not showing a little sketch. Gave it to Claude, and Claude created well, I did say keep it super simple, but you can see that's a fully interactive thing. So yeah, I know ChatGPT is very popular, but actually I think looking at some of those other tools like Google and Claude, you can even make these interactive ones that can be shared. So my one was a pretty spurious example, but actually you can, and it does, I said lol because it's quite funny, like super basic, but this was 5 seconds and it actually did make what I drew. So you can see that if you're a little bit more ambitious and maybe prompt it a few more times and a bit more careful with your prompting, a week could be a really long time to actually even have quite an involved prototype. So I think this is definitely worth exploring. I've only really played with it and haven't used it too seriously yet, but this might be an underexplored avenue, because then you've got this working prototype. if you publish it and then share the link, then people can actually use it as well. So it's not just a picture, it's actually like a fully functional thing. And we had somebody here using Gemini to make content for Canvas, and then actually, they kind of vibe coded the page and the content and then just pasted that straight into Canvas. It didn't work, first of all, because Canvas strips out some CSS and stuff that people are familiar with. So they just asked, hey, here's a screenshot of what it looks like in Canvas. It's not working. And Gemini goes, oh, of course, sorry. Yeah, sometimes LMSs do this. Here's code that will work with the LMS, and it worked perfectly. So, people are already starting to experiment with this. So actually getting, that's why I mentioned earlier, I think it is actually kind of a golden age. Like if you just want to throw away prototype that you can really see what does it look like, what does it work, it can even be quite detailed and actually fully interactive from something as simple as a pen sketch. So I think it's quite exciting from that perspective. If you want something that's going to be production ready, really robust, obviously it's going to be a lot of time and quality control that needs to go into it. But if you just want to make digital prototypes, it seems like there's a lot of tools now to use.
100%. I would argue that ChatGPT does it as well, and in the coding end, maybe you have to be a bit more familiar with code, but it's been great for me or spreadsheets or whatever it is that I'm doing. It's been great for me to do exactly that. But you're right that some are probably a bit more user friendly than that one. But 100%, I think it may be a golden age with Gen AI enabling us to throw things together. Again, I go back to the comic showing why I don't think production ready. The amount of time I would have to spend to get that comic to look exactly how I want it is huge versus something I can throw together now and get some instant feedback on. But thanks for sharing. We've got some more in the chat. We've got more pictures.
Dan's trying to popularize vibe learning design as a theme.
And what is that exactly?
Well, that was excellent. Thank you so much, Nick, for provoking us with that, with your advocacy for rapid prototyping, and the chat's going very well. Here's a question from Kat. Does high fidelity prototyping align with the rapid prototyping? So,
I mean, not well. I mean, again, the answer is, in my head, I'm selling quick and dirty, go fast, and get it done and then throw it away. But high fidelity, I think what naturally happens is you move to iteration, or you move to kind of those other types of prototyping. And that's where so your initial models are getting more detailed, you're happy with them. Eventually you have to move, and if you've done it in terms of tools, if you've used a tool like a Gen AI or you've used Photoshop, it has to be built in Moodle, just as an example. You've got to move away at some stage because you're kind of wasting time. But you can start adding fidelity when you need to get feedback about particular things, or you want to show perhaps a different design team who's helping you. Maybe there's a coding team or a video team or whatever it is. You put as much fidelity as you want so that they get the user requirements from the prototype itself. That's kind of one of the hidden things about it. So the prototype acts as the user requirements in some of these cases.
Beautiful. Yep. So thank you so much, Nick. You've got thanks coming in the chat. We'll close the recording in a few moments, or I think I might shut it down now. I wanted to let everybody know about the next webinar, but before I do that, can we indicate our thanks to Nick for an excellent presentation and really getting our work minds in gear with not unthinking process.
Thanks, everybody.